This was my most productive December ever, until it wasn't. Hi, my name is Sarah, and welcome to my channel, which is all about sewing and styling a handmade wardrobe. I have several things to share with you that I have made recently, and I'm going to start with the dress that I am wearing right now, which is McCall's 6612. I made a view D with the longer sleeves. I cut a size 8 at the shoulders and the chest, and then I graded to a size 10 at the hips. And I ended up shortening the length of the dress by 9 inches, and I shortened the sleeves by 2.5 inches. This pattern has been in my stash for a very long time. I made one version of the dress many years ago, but I don't have that anymore. And I always wanted to make a second one because I think that the pattern is really nice. There's basically two different bodice fronts. There's this one that has this big drapey cowl neck, and then there's a second version that has more of a built-in cowl neck. I'd like to make that version someday, but I really wanted to make this version as a warm, cozy winter dress. The fabric that I used is a polka dot cotton spandex jersey that I got from Minerva. I am very happy to announce that I was chosen as a Minerva brand ambassador. I had actually applied to become a brand ambassador for Minerva 3 times before I was finally accepted. And so if you have wanted to join that program but you have not been accepted, I encourage you to just keep trying because you never know when you might be chosen. This first fabric that they sent me is a really nice standard cotton spandex jersey. It has a nice heft and weight to it, and I thought it would be perfect for a maxi t-shirt dress that I could wear in the wintertime. I do find that with most knit dresses, I need to be a little bit careful about my undergarments that they're not going to show underneath, but I would say that for pretty much any knit dress. It's not just unique to this particular fabric. In the winter, I'm normally wearing thick tights underneath, and that's usually enough to omit any underwear lines that might show. The construction of this dress is very easy. It's basically like a standard t-shirt. The cowl neck pattern piece for this is enormous. I'm going to show you what it looks like at its fullest length. When I was constructing the dress, I cut out the cowl and I was just thinking, this is going to be so huge, it's going to look comical. But actually, when it's scrunched down and you're wearing it, I really like it. It's nice and thick, and it's kind of like wearing a built-in scarf. I took this dress with me on my trip to visit my father in Colorado, and I wore it on Christmas Day, and it was really lovely. And I also wore it another time on that trip with a sweater over top, and so it looked more like a top and a skirt, and I really liked both looks. This dress has some similarities in my mind with the True Bias Nico dress, but I think I actually prefer the fit of this one a little bit more for a few different reasons. First of all, the sleeve fit in this is really good on me. It's not too tight. I've been struggling a little bit lately with my biceps being a little bit larger, and the Nico top has very close fitting sleeves, but with this pattern, I found that they fit perfectly. I didn't need to do any adjustment. I also think that the fit and the body of this dress is a little bit closer in the waist. On the Nico dress, it's more straight up and down, and there's no shaping for the waist, and I find that this coming in a little bit is more flattering on my particular body type. And then finally, this dress is slightly A-line shaped, so you don't need slits at the bottom. I do like the slits in the Nico, I don't have any issues with that, but I do really like the gradual A-line shape of this. I think it's very elegant, very graceful looking, and I can still walk in it really easily. I don't have a need for a slit. So I definitely want to revisit this dress in the future. Like I said in the beginning, there's 2 different types of bodices, and I would like to try the other one at some point. There's also a regular crew neck if you don't want the cowl. And then there's different sleeve lengths, different body lengths. So you could basically make a different dress for every season of the year, and I just really enjoy the pattern. I think it's a really good one. Unfortunately, it is out of print at this point, but you could probably find it on sites like Etsy or eBay. The second dress that I made is the Nita Lee South Bank dress. This pattern I had purchased in my Black Friday haul, and I'd been really wanting to make it up, and I decided to do a tester version. The fabric that I used for this is a sweater knit that I got for free from Morex Fabrics in a sponsored video, and I'll link that video down in the description box in case you want to check it out. I find that in the wintertime, I don't wear woven dresses as much, but I do wear knit dresses because I just find them really simple, easy to wear with tights and boots. You can layer over it, you can belt it. There's lots of different ways you can style a comfy knit dress, and I think that the South Bank is a perfect example of that particular type of garment. So for the sizing, I made a size 6 at the shoulders and the chest, and then I graded up to a size 8 at the waist and the hip, and I think that sizing was really spot on for me. I did shorten the dress by 1.5 inches because I'm only 4'9", and I also shortened the sleeves 2.5 inches, but I find them to be slightly too long still, so I think next time I'd go ahead and shorten another 1/2 inch or so just to make them where I want them to be. This dress was another one that was just incredibly easy to construct. I think I did it in a few hours. I did choose to omit the pockets because I read so many reviews that said that they kind of pooch out a little bit and they're not very attractive, so I just left them off. Other than that, I didn't make any design changes. This sweater knit fabric is really nice. It's very soft, and the only complaint about it is that it's slightly too thin. It's a little bit sheer when I wear it on. So if I were gonna wear this dress to the office, I would wear a slip underneath, and in the clips and in the photos, I am wearing a nude colored slip underneath the dress. If I were just wearing it around the house, I probably wouldn't bother, but that is my only slight gripe about this dress, is it's just a little bit too sheer. But otherwise, the fabric is very soft and has a nice drape to it. It feels good on the skin, and it's not too heavy, which is great in a sweater knit. I will absolutely be making more of the South Bank at some point. I want to try the tops, but I also want to make another dress. I really like the fit of the dress pattern. I feel like it's body skimming without being body hugging. It's just super comfortable and versatile and so easy to make as well. Moving on to tops, the first top I want to share with you is Simplicity 8529. This is the Sew House 7 toaster sweater. It's the Simplicity version that has a dropped shoulder. And I chose to make the simple standard sweatshirt pattern without the funnel neck. Now, my reason for making this top and also the next one is because I wanted to compare two of my favorite sweatshirt patterns to decide which one was going to be my TNT going forward. So I started with this one. The fabric that I used is a See You at 6 French terry with the matching ribbing that I got from Surge Fabrics in their Black Friday sale. Because I had made this pattern before, I had already altered it, so I had started with a size small, and then I did crop the body length a little bit, and I also changed up the sleeves so that the cuffs were a little bit more tapered. Originally, they're very, very loose and not tight to the wrist, and I didn't really like that, so I made that change. I did put twill tape in to reinforce the shoulder seams. I always do that on my knit garments, but I'm not really sure that I need to do it on a sweatshirt like this because the fabric is already a little bit more sturdy. Let me know in the comments if you reinforce the shoulder seams when you're making a thick sweatshirt like this, or if you just stick to it with like t-shirts or dresses. This fabric is really, really lovely. It's nice and spongy feeling. It has a good amount of stretch, and it's very warm. Since I have discovered that I do like wearing orange, I decided to go for this particular shade, and I think that it's perfect for fall and winter. I think that I'll get a lot of wear out of this sweatshirt. It's a really simple pattern, but it's very comfortable to wear. Next up, I have the Megan Nielsen Jara sweatshirt. Now, I'm not going to talk about this too much just because I have already talked about it in my previous video where I did style this sweatshirt in several different ways. In case you missed that one, I'm going to link it down in the description box. But this is also the plain sweatshirt version, and I made it out of the exact same See You at 6 French terry. It's just in a different colorway. And I also used the matching rib. Now for this sweatshirt, I made this size 0. I did shorten the sleeves, I think 2 inches, but I did not shorten the body length. Now for this version, I omitted the twill tape in the shoulder seams because I was trying to see if there was any difference between this one and the orange one. So far, I can't detect a difference, but I guess time will tell. I don't think this is stretching out at all, at least for the few times that I've worn it. Now compared to the Simplicity sweatshirt, this is a little bit longer, but like I said, I did shorten that other pattern, so they're probably fairly similar in length originally. The other differences that I noticed is with the Jara, the neckline is a little bit less wide and the shoulder fit is a little bit more close to the body, but then at the bottom hem, at the hip, it's much, much looser compared to the Simplicity. So if I'm gonna get nitpicky, I really prefer the fit of the Jara up at the shoulders, but I prefer the more cropped, closer fit of the Simplicity at the bottom. So I think in the future going forward, what I decided was that my TNT is going to be the Jara, but in future versions, I will probably shorten the body length just like an inch or so, and then go ahead and taper in the bottom hem just to bring it a little bit closer to the body, and I think that will be my perfect standard sweatshirt. Let me know in the comments if you have a favorite standard sweatshirt pattern. I would love to hear what it is, because there are so many patterns out there on the market, and I feel like I've tried them all, but there's probably a few out there still that I haven't made yet. Now this next one is going to be really hard to show on a hanger because wrap tops never look good on a hanger, but I will of course be inserting clips and photographs. This pattern is the Vicky Sews Kim cardigan. Now full disclosure, I did receive this pattern for free as part of my brand ambassadorship. That ambassadorship has since ended, but I did want to let you know that I did receive the pattern for free. I made the pattern in a size 36. I did do a full bicep adjustment, because my previous experience with Vicky Sews patterns is that their arms are a little bit tight. So I did do a full bicep adjustment. I shortened the sleeves 2.5 inches, and I did the longer view. There's actually 2 views for this top. You can do a cropped view that cuts off at the waist, or you can do a hip length view, and that is the view that I chose. This was basically a tester version. I wanted to use some leftover fabric and try this out before cutting into some really nice sweater knit. So this is a polka dot bamboo spandex jersey that I got from Emma One Sock that I had previously made a Galena dress out of, and I had just enough left to make this particular cardigan. Now I only loosely followed the instructions for this. I actually made a mistake that you're supposed to leave a hole in one side for the ties to go through, and I just had a little bit of a sewing error on my serger, and when I serged the seams, the hole that I had intended to leave just had disappeared. So I ended up putting a buttonhole on the side instead to put the tie through, and that worked perfectly fine. This particular top does have negative ease, and so you will need to pull it pretty tightly around your body. I do find that it takes a little bit of pulling, a little bit of situating so that it sits nicely on the body, but once you do that, it looks really good. In the photos, I have it styled without a top underneath, a sort of more dressy look, but for practical reasons, I do find that the neckline is pretty low, so when I actually wore this top one day, I went ahead and put on a knit camisole underneath, just to give me a little bit more security so that it doesn't dip down too low and show my bra. I do really like this top, and I would consider making it again, but I have a few other wrap top knit patterns that I want to try in my stash and kind of really test them out and see which one is my favorite. I don't know if this is the one, but I do really like the look of this top, and I think that I will get some wear out of it this year. Now let's talk about a project that was a total departure for me. I made a bag. Now, most of you are probably not aware, but way back in the day, I used to have a small business sewing and selling knitting bags. And I ended up giving up and closing my shop because I just got so sick of sewing the same thing over and over again. And so ever since then, I have not enjoyed sewing bags, and I pretty much avoid it as much as I can. However, I was going to be taking this trip to Colorado for Christmas, and I decided that I wanted to sew myself a bag to take with me because I have a few really nice designer bags, but I'm still at the stage where I'm a little bit afraid of messing them up or scratching them or getting them squished or something, and I just didn't really want to travel with them. So I made myself this one because I figured it would be good for travel, and if it gets squished or scratched, like it's fabric, it's going to be fine. There's two different views to this bag, and I chose to make version A, which has a zippered pocket on the front. There's also one with a snap flat pocket, and I used some scraps for the exterior. I made a suit out of this Rifle Paper Company cotton linen canvas, and I had enough left to make this bag, and I actually still have enough left of that fabric that I could make a bucket hat at some point. The interior is a quilting cotton from my stash. It's an art gallery fabric, and I did actually find all of the notions that I needed at Joann Fabrics. I already had the zipper in my stash, and I already had a D-ring in my stash, but everything else I did find at my local Joann's. Now, I was really limited in color options, but I was able to get everything that matched, and I'm really happy that I could find everything there because sometimes it's really hard to find purse findings locally. I've made several noodle head bags in the past, and this one was very easy to construct. I had no problem with the instructions. I did make one deviation. I decided to add a slip pocket to the back of the bag because I thought I would put my phone there. But actually, I find that because of the design of the bag and the way that it slings over your shoulder, it does kind of move a little bit pretty easily. So putting my phone in that back pocket doesn't make it super secure. So if I had it to do all over again, instead of doing a slip pocket, I would have done a zippered pocket. I think that would have been a better idea. But otherwise, I found that this bag was very functional. It's actually really roomy. You can fit quite a lot in here. I could put my planner in there. I could fit a water bottle in there. The only thing that I don't like about it is that for me, it's actually a little bit too much space. Like if you're trying to find like a chapstick or something, yeah, you gotta kind of like dig around in the bottom of the bag to find it. I think that again, if I were doing it all over again, I might add some smaller interior pockets on the lining just to keep things a little bit more organized. I also decided to make this bag 2 days before I went on my trip. It was a very last minute snap decision. So because of that, this is not my best work. The stitching isn't quite perfect or anything, but it was functional enough, and I'm really happy with how this looks. I do think that I will carry this bag with me for travel in the future. I think that it's really good for that. And so I think it was well worth my time and the time crunch of trying to get this bag done for traveling. I had to stop and take my cardigan off. I was like dying of heat stroke. Okay, so this next one, I have a lot to say about it. This is the Avid Seamstress The Blazer. I got it in a needle sharp box, and it was my only outstanding needle sharp box project that I had not sewn. So I got it sewn up in December, and it turned out to be one of my favorite makes of the year. The fabric that was in the box is a Robert Kaufman flannel, and then the interior is just your standard lining. Now, because in the needle chart box they give you a paper pattern, I did have to trace all my pieces, and there are a ton of pieces in this pattern because it is a lined jacket. That part was probably the worst. It took me the longest. I thought I was never going to get to the end, but I did eventually get all my pieces traced, and after that it was pretty smooth sailing. I made the size 1 and I did shorten the sleeves, but I didn't do any other alterations, and actually that ended up being a little bit of an error because there is a shoulder dart here which provides your bust shaping, and I find that it is a little bit roomy there. I should have done a small bust adjustment, but I was feeling a little bit lazy and I was like, it's a jacket, it doesn't matter, you're going to be wearing it over other things. And that is true, but I do think ideally I probably should have done that small bust adjustment and it would have fit a little bit better. Otherwise, I think that the fit on this is actually really good on me. It's very comfortable. I like how it's relaxed but not too oversized. I really like the style of this blazer because although it is sort of a tailored blazer look, it's a lot simpler to construct and it doesn't have a lot of the really complex techniques that you would find in a blazer or a coat. Like the pocket construction is actually really simple to do, but it looks very clean and elegant. I like that a lot. There's no shoulder pads, there's no sleeve heads. So if you are looking for a first-time blazer project and you don't want to make the Heather blazer, I don't like the Friday Pattern Company Heather blazer because in my mind it's a little bit too oversized, but this one is a little bit more of a closer fit and it's just as easy to put together. I found the instructions to be very easy to follow. There's actually a lot of different seam allowances in this, but they are very clearly marked. So I thought that initially when I was tracing it and seeing how all the seam allowances were different that I was gonna get tripped up on it, but actually it's so clear in the instructions. It says, you know, sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, sew with a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. So if you're worried about that kind of thing, just pay attention to the instructions and you will be fine. The other thing I like about having the different seam allowances is that it allows you to not have to trim. I had some issues sometimes with trimming that I will cut my fabric. I've done this so many times, and actually I'm going to have another make where I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But when you have your seam allowances the correct amount in the first place and you don't have to trim, it just eliminates a step and saves a little bit of fabric. So I do like that aspect of it. The lining is bagged on this, and you do the sleeves before you do the hem. I'd never done it that way before. I'd always left a hole in the side seam and then did the sleeves through the side seam, which can be a little bit awkward and fiddly. So I really like the way that the instructions had you leave the hem open because it's just nice and easy to do those sleeves. The one thing that I will say I thought was a little bit strange about the instructions is that it does not tell you to ease the sleeve cap, so it doesn't tell you to put gathering stitches in the sleeve, it just tells you to sew it, and I find that to be a little bit weird. I went ahead and did the standard ease stitching in the cap, and I just found it so much easier to put in. On the lining, I didn't do that because I was feeling lazy. And it was much harder to put the sleeve in the armhole when I didn't have the ease stitching. So that is one change that I would make if you were making this blazer. Just construct the sleeve like you normally would. Other than that, I really enjoyed the sewing process of this blazer, and like I said, I love the way that it looks. It really matches my somewhat casual lifestyle, but it's still a nice looking blazer that you can pair with so many different things. I've already worn this a few times since making it, and I think this is going to be in my closet for so many years. I absolutely do want to make this pattern again. I've already had a couple of ideas for other versions that I could make. First of all, I think that it would be beautiful as a linen summer weight blazer. And then because the lines are so simple, I was even thinking of perhaps trying to do like a faux leather version. I think that that could also be really cool. This was my first time trying a pattern by the Avid Seamstress, and I really liked it so much that I'm thinking about possibly going back and looking at their other patterns and seeing if there's anything else that I want to make, because I just think that the instructions and the drafting were excellent on this. So at long last, we have come to the make that completely made me lose my sojo. This is the Megan Nielsen Hovia jacket. I made it out of a pre-quilted fabric. I believe this is Mine the Maker. I got it from Minerva and I did purchase it with my own money. By the way, all of my Minerva links in the description box are going to be affiliate links, so if you make a purchase using my links, I will get a small percentage of the sale. So thank you for supporting me if you do that. So for sizing, I chose to make the size 0, and I did shorten the sleeves, I think 2.5 inches. I made the mid-length view, and I made the view with the collar and with the separate belt. Now, first of all, I just want to say that there's nothing wrong with the pattern. The pattern is actually really simple to construct. The issue that I had was really about the fabric. So this is a very lightly pre-quilted fabric. It has a poly batting, and then the exterior and the interior are both this nylon, and it's very slippery and difficult to work with. I did my best to pattern match or at least be pattern consistent when I was cutting out my pieces so that they would look even all the way across. Technically, I had bought enough fabric to make the longest view, but when I realized that these pieces have like really large stitching on it and that I would need to pattern match, I ended up only having enough fabric to do the shorter version. I did do flat felled seams on the shoulders and the armholes because I was trying to eliminate bulk. And theoretically, I think that that was a good idea, but I had some trouble with it because what I ended up having to do is using the outer nylon portion for the folding the seam under, and I had to trim the batting and the under layer portion and so that my seams wouldn't be bulky. And then I also had to trim half of the other seam allowance so I would have fabric to wrap it around. And basically that was just really, really tricky to do. I kept snipping accidentally into the actual fabric, like I snipped the coat a few times. Fortunately, it didn't go all the way to the exterior, but the fabric was just really slippery and tricky to work with, and I kept making those little mistakes. It was also just really difficult to get the fabric to stay folded under, and so my actual stitching lines are a little bit wonky. It was just not the most fun experience to go through. For the side seams, I did go ahead and bind them because I knew there was just no way I was going to be able to do the flat felled seams for the sleeve and the side seams. So I did use this binding that I had in my stash. I actually had a really hard time finding a coordinating color with this fabric, but in the end, I think it worked out okay, and it is on the inside. I initially had cut out the belt loops and I stitched them, but it was impossible to turn them right side out because it was just too thick. What I should have done actually is I should have separated the fabric and just made the belt loops out of this nylon layer only and not all 3 layers, because that would have made it much less thick. I actually might go ahead and go back and do that because I ended up stitching the belt to the back of the jacket to keep it on all the time, and I'm not really in love with that finish, and I think I might want to try to wear this with like a purchased belt. So I may end up going back and putting on the thinner belt loops on the outside just like the pattern tells you to, because I think that's probably a better solution than what I did. I started out sewing this project with a size 70 microtex needle, but once I got to the hemming and doing the side seams with all of that bulk, I actually ended up switching to a size 100 top stitching needle because I ended up breaking a few other needles, and I think that was necessary just because it is so bulky. I also did a ton of hand stitching on this because I just thought it would be too thick to try to stitch through all those layers with my machine. So hand stitching is not my favorite thing to do, but I just took my time and got through it in the end. This entire project just felt like a slog. One thing I forgot to address that also made it a pain in the neck to make this jacket is that because this is a nylon and a poly batting, you can't really iron it. I tried to do my iron on the lowest setting and used a pressing cloth, and basically that didn't work. Like I would iron it and no crease would be pressed in, and I couldn't get a crease because I would need to turn up the iron setting up too hot and then that might melt my fabric. So I just didn't bother with the iron after my first few tries, and that also made it really difficult and tricky because I couldn't press any of my seams. And the fabric is so puffy that made it really, really difficult to get any seams straight and flat. So that was also a contributing factor to why this project was such a slog. Now, like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with the pattern. In retrospect, I actually think that this would have been a lot easier if instead of doing an unlined version, if I had just lined it. It would have been a lot easier because I would not have had to worry about finishing my seams. But because this was a double-sided fabric, I felt like I needed to do it unlined. If I had it to do all over again, I would use a more stable fabric like a quilting cotton and I would line it, and I think that I would have a much better experience sewing it. As it was, I think this project took me about 3 weeks to make because I basically just got so sick of it that I would need to put it down for a few days and then not pick it back up again until I was ready to tackle it. I thought about putting it away for a while and just working on something else, but I know myself and I know that if I did that, I would never pick it back up again. So I forced myself to push through the project until I was finished, and because I did that, I think that is why it killed my sojo. After I finished this project, I just really did not feel like sewing anymore, and I still haven't really gone back to it. I have started a new project, but that is also kind of a slog at the moment. So I definitely think that this particular garment is the one that put me off sewing for a little while. I'm sure that my sojo will return eventually, but for now, I'm just kind of giving it a rest. I do like this finished project. I don't want to complain too much. I think that it looks nice. I don't think it's the most practical because I did wear it the other day. It wasn't super cold out and it was fine, but I also just know that this is not warm enough for an actual winter coat for me. And I think that in the fall and spring, I might reach for other coats more. I definitely wouldn't wear this inside because it's too warm for that. So it's a little bit of a weird material, a little bit of a weird style in terms of my climate and my lifestyle. But I do like the way that it looks, and I think that I will get some wear out of it. It's just not going to go down as a favorite. In case you missed my video about the Jara and the different ways that I styled it, I'm going to put that up here so you can watch it next. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you again next time.